Welcome to another episode of The Wrong End of the Snake with your hosts, the Sultans of Sound, the Admirals of Audio, Hooch and Tater. Follow us at all your favorite social media outlets at Wrong End of the Snake. Watch the live stream on YouTube, but if you want to interact, make sure you subscribe to the Zoom webcast and ask questions of the guests and these dynamic hosts as the show unfolds before your very eyes. And without further ado, here are your hosts, Hooch and Tater.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Wrong End of the Snake. Hey, shout out to Pete Merluzzi for creating our intro, our new intro. The music is a band called Doomslide, and you should check them out wherever you get your music. So we'll be having that intro from now on. Thanks, Pete. Wrong End of the Snake is a webcast about audio, touring, and the relationships we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on the Wrong End of the Snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably 10 years with Linkin Park. Also, shout out to Kim Hilton at Earthworks. She sent us these Earthworks Icon microphones, and apparently Sweetwater is running a bunch of bundles. We don't really endorse any products, but since she was so nice to send us these
unsolicited.
Unsolicited. We thought that we should just give her a shout out, and apparently they're running all kinds of bundles at Sweetwater for like $200. You can get the stand and the mic itself. So go check out those things at Sweetwater if you can.
It's an Orbit Triad stand. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. Yeah. But the actual they're combining it with an actual desktop stand.
To go on. Okay, with the Triad Orbit. Okay, cool.
It's quite a bundle. So go check that out, guys. Enough with the commercials. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend. He has 9 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Engineer of the Year awards. I'm Ken Van Druden, aka Pooch. I'm a front house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry. I'm a 3-time Grammy nominated recording engineer and have 8 Top Dog Front of House Engineer of the Year awards. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to be able to ask questions of our guests, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. Links to register are in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app. We will answer as many questions as possible during the hour and then answer any leftover questions in our Q&A overtime episode. Look for that to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in a few days. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to visit our social media. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you tell us about our guests this week?
All right. Very pleased to have SMYTH on the show today. Legend, company owner, all-around great guy. Had the pleasure of working for him one time. And let's talk about SMYTH now. SMYTH was born in England, went through school, joined the RAF at 16, which is the Royal Air Force. He then spent 4.5 years with Pan American Airways. SMYTH quit his real job in 1972. Moved to the U.S. and took off to be a drum tech with the band Flash. His next gig was with Genesis with Peter Gabriel in 1973. And in 1980, thanks to the generosity of that band that came out with that great record, Breakfast in America, Supertramp,
yes,
he orchestrated the launch of Delicate Productions Incorporated. Delicate Productions is an award-winning production company providing audio, lighting, video for concerts, tours, special events based in Camarillo, California. Please, we're so thankful for having this legend on here today. Let's welcome SMYTH. Thanks for being here.
Okay. Okay. Hooch, you're on. Yeah, where's the applause loop? Okay, we'll skip the applause loop. Thank you, guys. Thrilled to be on the Ken and Kevin show.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I like that. I like the sound of that. I just noticed you just took up 5 minutes of my time. With your
That's all?
promotion. This is worse than CNN, man. Okay, so I'll cut my dialogue back a little bit.
Hurry up and tell us about yourself. Come on.
Oh, I'll tell you about myself. Well, as Tater said there, born in England. I was born in Stamford, Lincolnshire. My dad was in the RAF. We're based at RAF Wittering, which is sort of fairly central England. When I was 5, we went to Egypt. We had a posting. Dad was working just along by the Suez Canal until the Suez crisis in 1956, and we were evacuated. Really, evacuated to Malta and then on to England. We moved to Essex, RAF North Weald, home of Treble 1 Squadron, the Black Arrows, equivalent to Blue Angels back in the day, except they crash more often. And then my father was asked to go to America to learn the Thor missile system. That's basically a very large rocket with a nuclear warhead. He was over there for about 8 months, came back, and we were posted to the middle of Norfolk, right in the middle of the countryside, at a disused US Air Force base. Went to school in the village, worked on a local farm. I think that's important because I developed, work ethic. Anyone who's worked on a farm knows that it's killer work, but it was enjoyable. I'd milk the cows in the evening and be busy all through holidays and such. And there's a little village school, church next door. I was in the choir, but it was while I was in the choir, I heard that the guy who used to pump the organ for Mrs. Hayhoe was moving out of the county. So I managed to get the job of pumping the organ back before the electric organ was feasible, because the church heating came before an organ pump, and I did that for £0.50 a month, 2 and 6, and I realized now that was my first introduction into the world of music and the Roadie syndrome. We moved, then we were posted again. They disbanded the Thor system. We went to RAF Wittering, where I was born. That was now a 3-mile long runway for V bombers and the Blue Steel missile. I left school, joined the RAF. Okay, as apprentice, back to Wittering again, and I enjoyed it. But one thing was I worked at nights in the communication center, and after about 1 o'clock in the morning, things were quiet. I was always into music, and BBC suppressed music. They can only play so many records because of the musicians' union. So I had some of the best radio receivers that the government could buy. And I spent about 5 hours listening to the pirate stations, Radio London, Radio Caroline. Picked up on all of the bands from the West Coast, the Summer of Love. That's pretty much the Doors, the Love with Arthur Lee, Country Joe and the Fish, all of that. And then when they came over to England, myself and a couple of my mates, we'd have our caftan, our beads and bells. We'd put an RAF jumpsuit on and our beret and go over to the MT section and borrow some transport and go to London for the all-nighters. And I became really into that whole music scene. The RAF wasn't my cup of tea. Moved down to London after a couple of jobs as a beer porter. I landed the job I wanted at Pan Am Communications. Happy there. Paul Newman, currently at Claire's, he came down from the RAF too. He was in the RAF, as were several others who were in the business. And he started off working down in the city wearing a suit. That didn't last long. He started to work for local bands, and he worked for Flash with Peter Banks was the ex-Yes, and Tony Kaye from Yes was on the first album. And it was a success in America. They were going back to America, and I heard from the drummer they weren't hiring a drum roadie. They wanted to pick one up in New York. And so I talked to Paul. I said, hey, if I have a ticket, how about me? He said, no problem. So I got a ticket from Pan Am, cheap, gave him my notice. And my first gig was Fairleigh Dickinson College, New Jersey. So it's like,
wow,
in the deep end.
Yes.
But it was trial by fire, because it was 17 shows in a row. I've got it in the diary. And we flew every day with 13 pieces of musical instruments.
Wow.
Paul and I drive the truck down to the airport. I'd drop the gear off. He would then try to explain that band's coming later. We've got this baggage, and with a bit of ingenuity and $20 bills, it would make it on the airplane. I drop the truck off, get a cab, come back, and we fly. As soon as we got to the next venue, he'd go straight to figure out where the gear was. I'd go and pick up a truck, come back. He would tell me where to go. Sometimes we'd drive around to the terminal and it'd be sitting there where the aircraft are. It was completely different then. And we were opening for, Quicksilver Messenger Service, James Gang, Steve Miller Band. Later we opened for Three Dog Night with
nice.
Shoko. And it wasn't easy, and I loved it.
You caught the bug. You caught the bug.
2 tours, and it really was terrific. And it was then that I was sitting in the marquee, and a guy comes up to me, Tim Stewart, the roadie. He says, "Are you available?" I said, "When?" He said, "Starting Monday." I said, "Yep." I said, "Who is it?" He said, "Oh, it's band Genesis." So I was thrilled because Peter Gabriel was with the band, and they were. I just thought they were wonderful.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And I did a short tour of Europe. All this time I'm in the deep end. You know, there's no training. It's use your wits and say yes. So that worked really well. I want to quickly mention when we were going down to London, when I was still in the Air Force, we went to one concert, Christmas on Earth Continued at Olympia, and it was put on by Harvey Goldsmith, and it was phenomenal. There were Traffic, Eric Burden, Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, the scene right there, there are other bands, and all night, it was absolutely amazing what was happening in and around that time. However, here we go, back to Flash, working with Genesis, and I was good friends with my local greengrocer, Willie Fife, and Willie ended up being another road guy. Willie knew John Lord really well from Deep Purple. Purple had been doing really well, so he asked if we'd help him move to Berkshire, to his new house there, and we obviously, yep, we're on to it. And while I was at John's house, he introduced me to a good friend of his, a guy named Andrew Tribe. Andrew said, you know, I'm looking for a couple of roadies for a band. You know, it's like, okay, I think I can help you. And give me your number and I'll call you tomorrow. and the artist was Leo Sayer, songwriter. Back in the 70s, he was hot. So I called Paul Newman. Hey, Paul, got us a gig. You want to take care of the artist or the band? He said, naturally, I'll take care of the artist. And he became Leo's personal, and I took care of the band. Now, this was another trial by fire because I'm now introduced to the B3 and Leslie cabinets.
Yes.
You didn't have to move that. I figured you had to move that in John Lord's house. I figured that would have got you real familiar with that.
Yeah, it was in the deep end. I mean, and all along in the 70s, it's in the deep end. Just say yes.
How did you manage to not fool people, but how did you manage to be like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, and just do it?
I think a lot of it was the personality. I also worked with good artists who, like, I worked with on the B3. I worked with Nicky Hopkins, who was a renowned session guy. He was in the band at one time. Chris Stainton, Mad Dog's an Englishman. I think he still works with Eric Clapton. These are super nice guys. You think you've got a problem, they come out, they know, they'll help you. Everything's about ask. I learned that real fast. If you've got a problem on stage, there's a whole stack of people around you with the different bands who if you ask, somebody comes and you'll find they'll help you.
So it's generous people, but did you feel like some of them knew that you didn't know what you were doing, or you had
absolutely, because I wouldn't have asked them otherwise.
Right.
But Paul taught me the whole basics. He said, look, guitars are easy. It plugs in. If it plugs in, it's going to plug out somewhere else.
That's
you just
great.
got to make sure that the one the one with the jack isn't confused with the XLR. This one's got a ground. They go separate. Okay, good. So
okay,
that's next.
Great.
But working with Leo Sayer was that was terrific. Now, he'd done some warm-up shows, and they'd used an outfit called Marshall Equipment Hire for their PA. So I said, okay, I'll go along with the Marshall Equipment Hire thing, and I was introduced to Joe Brown, the owner of
Tasco.
Marshall Equipment Hire. Now, Marshall Equipment Hire, I think, with Joe Brown had Manfred Mann's PA, and hooked up. They were joined up with Jim Marshall from Amplifier World, and they were a great outfit actually, but it was predominantly Scotsmen. David Kirkwood was there. He and Keith Bradley. He and David and Keith had worked with the Scottish band Marmalade. I think most people in our end of the business know Davey.
Yeah, you know what though? I'm thinking there's a lot of kids that don't. Davey's a legendary, legendary sound guy.
Well, I mean, and then Keith would come out. Now Keith, he didn't do too bad. He manages Elton right now.
Yeah. We're talking about really legendary people. If you haven't, go ahead and go research.
And,
I had the pleasure of doing a couple tours with Davey at Davey at Front House and me at Monitors. And man, I miss that man.
Yeah, I miss him too. He's good dude.
Brian Hendry.
Another one.
Another Scotsman, Arnie Toshner, the lighting guy, Ronnie McCurd, all Scotsmen. Peter Alexander was one of the few Englishmen. And later, Graham Holmes, the Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Graham and Peter Alexander worked with the Who, and they were instrumental in taking the PA from England over to the US around about, I think, 1975. The PAs back then, it was pretty much the JBL 4560, known as the Perkins bin. We had a mid box similar to the Perkins box, and we called it the Roy box. And I'm not sure, but I suspect this was a Roy Clare adaptation.
That's interesting.
Clarification on that. So it's like a JBL 4550, but with two 12s instead of the single 15.
Interesting.
2482 drivers, 2420, 2470, 1-inch stroke drivers. There was a bullet option, and the various, the big lens was, I think it was a 2395. The 90-degree flare horn was a 2350.
And this is all stacking back then. There's no flying,
stacking.
No flying junkyard.
One interesting thing. There was a real long throw horn. I think that the flare was about 5 foot, but that was coupled with a Shoko base element, which was a huge fiberglass flare that must have flared out to something like this thing would have been at least 6 foot long. It was about 5 foot wide by 40 inches high. And you stack those 3 high. We use those for the Stones. And that really was, the latest, greatest bass solution for football stadiums, etc., etc. The floor monitors was a tuba 12. We had various horns that just clipped on the top of the tuba 12. It meant that the cabinet it didn't have this massive cabinet. It was just the horn dropped on top. Then it started off as a 1-inch throat, 2470, ended up as a 2440, 2441. Back in those days, it was Mavis mixers.
Mavis. Yeah.
I got to quickly tell you, talking about the deep end. All right. So I'm working in the warehouse, and I get the message: Joe wants to see you. But when you go upstairs, just say yes to everything. So
just say yes.
I went up to the office. He introduced me to a guy from Virgin Records. He said, this gentleman has a performer playing the Royal Albert Hall. He's been quoted £3,000 to have the equipment delivered from Vangelis's studio to the Albert Hall, set up and return. I told him you could do it for £2,500 because I was in the moving business, you see. Right? Yes, yes.
As you do.
So I have to go off and I have to meet the artist, and I meet Vangelis at a mansion behind the Albert Hall, and then I go up to his studio in Mayfair, but it's on the 4th floor, and I tell him I have a B3. I've got Leo Sayers B3, and he can leave his in the studio, and he says no, why go? That goes. So I had to figure this out. I asked him, how did you get it up here? He said, oh, it came by crane. They closed off the street. So I'm off. I hire a crane. I go to the police. I shut the street off, and I'm in the deep end, bro, because this guy's got over 200 people on stage. He's got the English Chamber Choir. He's got 13 keyboards. He's got John Anderson singing. He's got Ginger Johnson's African drummers. And me. It was, and then on the afternoon of the show, who's in charge here? And everybody points at me. I got the delivery, and it was some big wooden packing crates, okay? And I opened them up, and they're timpani drums, some assembly required. All hands on deck. It was a nightmare. We pulled it off. The sound, Davey mixed the sound on the Pink Floyd Mavis quad consoles. He put Tycho cabinets all the way up in the gods and ran those with the surround. He had the choir, the English Chamber Choir. It was the most phenomenal show.
Wow, amazing.
Example of in the deep end. The Leo Sayers tours were terrific. Over to America, multiple dates. We'd be in a city for a week at a club, bottom line, boarding house in San Francisco, a lot of everywhere. but then Joe was putting me on tours during the breaks. So I was doing a lot of other tours. Leo Sayer was going over to do another American tour, and I've been elected now. I'm his monitor engineer. I stepped up at the wrong time and EQ'd for him, and so I'm off monitors, and I've now spent quite a lot of time in America, and I'm thinking it's not worth paying rent back in England, but it's 1976 now. Actually, I finished the Leo Sayer tour, and I got a phone call saying, "Don't come back to New York, go to Boston. You're the monitor engineer for Patti Smith, and take the console with you," which was a 10-5 purely monitor console. For what I was doing, it was absolutely fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I arrived for the Patti Smith show, and it challenges, because on the first show, a manager keeps nudging me, and I pulled down my logo. I said, "What is it?" He said, "She's talking to you." So Patty's doing her pogo dance. She's shaking her head around, and she's giving me instructions. She wants more Lenny Kaye in her monitor and this. So I spent the whole tour having to listen to the lyrics for my monitor cues. And she ended up, despite what people had told me, she was a lovely lady and was actually very sweet. And this was 1976 punk. So I carried on. I worked. I stayed in America. I went on the Kiss tours of 1977.
Oh, you poor.
1977, 78. This is the peak. Certainly at that time, they were the biggest thing on the road. It was a circus. It was an absolute circus. And I have to attribute my $7,000 hearing aids to Gene Simmons. I think it was after all of the touring, it was like the second to last show. Paul Chevalier comes running out. Paul was his bass roadie, and says, Gene, you forgot your earplugs." And I was devastated, because I'd spent hours on his mic with a big side fill, wedges, my trousers flapping, and the guy is on his. He wasn't on in his. He had just shut himself off.
Yes.
Earplugs. Kiss was eventful.
And he kept asking for more, didn't he?
Yeah, he'd give you a bit more tongue.
Yeah, more tongue.
And a couple nasty words.
The rest of the band, sweet. You know that. I think, but the circus, I mean, there was an incident, like they started the show, they stood on top of their high stacks, and those balconies came down, the gates open, Paul and Gene ran on stage. Peter Criss is now 35 feet up in the air. During one number, they were on stage thrusts. Paul Stanley had a thrust, Gene had a thrust. They went right out into the audience on hydraulics. And I was back behind the drummer, so I had to feed up the snakes. And Peter's up there. And I looking out, and through all the lights and smoke, I see a whole lot of aluminum across the stage. And then things start going quiet. And then, except Gene, who's hanging out there doing his thing, the stage left lighting tower had come down. It was a triple genie with a follow spot and a follow spot operator. Oh. And that landed almost exactly where those guys would have been if they were on their mic line.
Oh.
And the lighting genie tower came up, grabbed the power distro, that went up in the air. The cables pulled the amp racks off the back of the PA riser wing, and the speaker leads departed from the connectors, so it had bare ends. And what are you going to do?
What are you gonna do?
As Graham Thornton, the front of house guy, calls Arnie Tosh and says, Arnie says, play something. And Graham says, what do you want me to play? He says, play a picking Death March. And we proceeded to pull amplifier racks from stage right over to stage left. We patched things up, and the show went on, But Kiss was a zoo. I don't want to. I guess I'm going to skip forward because we want to get into the delicate thing.
Yeah.
Supertramp. I did a world tour with Olivia Newton-John. I came back and.
Were you wearing a headband and spandex?
I was asked to join Jet Productions. And Jet Productions was, I got to get Sharon Arden, who became Sharon Osbourne, had an argument with Joe Brown, not the first. And she decided they were going to set up their own production company. It was Jet Records was ELO. And I got the call. So I went over and we started building stuff. We bought a whole big Martin system. And then it was scuttled because the IRS was now investigating the tour. So I was back at Tasco, LA, and I didn't burn bridges there. Terry Price, who was running it with Paul, was my old mate. He'd worked for the Suite for years. And so I was working in the shop. I got a call from my old pal, Spy Matthews, who I'd worked with Leo in Australia. And he asked me if I'd come on board with Supertramp. They had elevated into arenas, bought their own sound system, and they weren't quite making their deadlines because they weren't proficient as to how to work with the local crews. And I was asked to come along and give whatever help I could. So it's a bit intimidating because these guys have been with the band forever, and then I come in as Spy's new boy. But I soon, found my place there. I was able to offer up. I guess I'd accumulated a fair amount of knowledge at that time. Help with the monitors, help expedite load-ins and load-outs. But I was really taken aback by the work ethic and a certain culture where everybody went in at the same time and everybody came out at the same time, regardless of what your job was. So that the still drum roadie, didn't elevate the drum techs till later. The drum roadie worked audio. A couple of the lighting guys, a couple of the backline guys worked lighting. The projectionist, he worked lighting. And everybody was there when the first motor went up to when the last motor was in its box. Everybody got paid the same. And the criteria was you had to give 100%. It didn't matter what your qualification was. You gave 100%, 100%, 100%. And the band, of course, were very generous. I remember leaving Canada for 3 weeks at home, and on the plane, Mark Felton, the tour accountant, had me sign for 3 weeks per diems. It's like, okay, so I went to Hawaii. We did tour, we finished in Europe, the band, huge success. They said they were taking time off the road and for 2 or 3 years. So I'm looking at all this equipment and I said, well, look, we need to form a production company. Your crew can be partners and you won't have to pay them a retainer. Well, that went down well.
Yeah, great idea.
Found out on the lighting that it was show lighting, but the band had owned half of the rig, hadn't paid for the balance. So we started Delicate Productions in the old Wonderloaf factory back in Beverly Hills. And I really didn't know much of how to run a production company. So not everybody wanted to come on board. A lot of the guys who were close to the band wanted to be with them when they built their studios and all, you know. So there might have been 6 or 7 of us. And I had to deal with the pricing. I didn't know I hadn't got a clue. So I called Terry Price at Tasco. He's working there with Paul. And he said, oh, it's simple, you know, figure on 5% of the equipment value. So that was my starter as to how to do the pricing. That backfired later when he asked me to cover a tour, and I gave him a price, and he murdered at me. Asked me, told me I was out of my head.
That's great.
And I got a call from the Clash, and they had some West Coast dates. And I said, okay. So I went off and we did some dates with the Clash, and it was memorable because, well, I'll put it this way. At the end of the last show at Santa Monica Civic, Joe Strummer comes up to me and he says, not bad for a bunch of hippies. Yeah. And then I got a call to do the Knack.
Yeah, Doug Feiger, Michigander.
Yeah, love that band.
And the engineers were going to come over from the UK, and that was Peter Granger and Adrian Fitzpatrick, who mixed monitors. It went very well, and they worked with Concert Sound. Concert Sound was the PA basically from the Man Band, and Barry Marshall, Martial Arts. Barry Marshall was the band manager, and that Concert Sound group. But just unlike the MEH scenario with Scotsman, these guys were all predominantly Welsh, and they picked up the name of the Taffia. You know, Taffy is a Welshman, so we knew them as the Taffia. And amongst their ranks was like Robert Collins and Pablo, Paul Bothroyd, Kerry Lewis.
Kerry Lewis,
yeah, you'd see, you know, and all these Welshmen. And Barry Marshall was in LA, and I sat down with him, and we kind of had a verbal. And he sent me the Pretenders. I sent him In Excess. He sent me Dire Straits. I sent him Supertramp. Yeah, and I had this great relationship with the Taffia. Peter Granger, wonderful engineer. He unfortunately had an accident and died, but working with him was phenomenal. Oh, and then actually Robert then took over. And those guys are still out there and doing it, and they're still
doing it.
And their kids. And their kids are out there doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Robert's and Carrie's kids.
Yeah. So that connection was very important. Now, what had happened now is Spy decided to go back to Australia after the Supertramp tour. He called me up and he said, look, is it too late for me to come on board? I'll bring over the Little River Band. So with Little River Band, phenomenal. We even did some stadium dates with them. That started the Aussie connection, which brought us Split Ends, which of course became Crowded House, Men at Work, Midnight Oil, In Excess, of course. So that really got us going in the 70s. the 80s. When we got to the 90s, we'd pretty much doing just a lot of the English bands, the 1 and 2 truck tours, Sade, Baja, Joan Armatrading, Bjork, Love and Rockets, The Church, Crimson, Sammy Hagar, Yanni, Heart. We took Heart on, we did 3 years, I think 83, 84, 85. I was the monitor engineer. That was taxing because I was trying to run a business with Spy from a back phone, you know.
Jeez.
No cell phones.
Backstage.
No cell phones.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No computer, no
phones,
internet.
No credit card.
Yeah.
That came in 1984, and no FedEx or any of those overnight shipments. But so 90s cruised along. Then we started coming to like Jane's Addiction went well. Ted Gardner from Men at Work, he was a drum roadie. Is now managing Jane's Addiction.
A lot of drum roadies did well. You think of like Mick Double from The Who, and a lot of drum roadies stepped up, didn't they?
Which tells you if you want to get on in this business.
I think it's because drum roadies have a lot of time. They're back there thinking about
a lot of time.
They're going to take over the world.
And what had happened there was Jane's Addiction played Reading Festival in England, and Perry Farrell wanted to do the same thing, but he wanted to tour it. And so Ted Gardner, asked us to go down a meeting, a triad artist with the agents, managers, promoters, and resolve how this was all going to happen. We had Kevin Lyman on our team. He was stage manager, but it was complex. It was deep because there was the second stage, the multiple bands, the village. It was a big concept, and it was a challenge, and it was one we took on, and it was successful. And that really was the start for us of a lot of festival type projects. That became Lollapalooza. Then we had the Horde Festival, Pledge of Allegiance, the Family Values type festival shows that we're working on, and then the K-Rock came up, and K-Rock was originally a show in San Jose, and then the guys literally drove overnight to the Universal Amphitheater, and we'd do the LA show. That, obviously that progressed, developed, and became a great sales point for us, an introduction to so many bands. And I think we got a lot of credibility with a lot of people because of the effort we put into that. On the second Lollapalooza tour, I met, we had Megan Holmes with us. Megan had gone to Cal Art School. I think she was there same time as Chris Grattan. And Megan then worked for LA Stage Call as a stagehand, but not as just as a stagehand. She was the crew chief.
Yep.
And she you didn't have to work with her too long to realize that she had the smarts, and she wanted to get into touring, and she came on board. And I think one of the first projects was the second Lollapalooza with Tool. And
thrown into the deep end.
Yeah.
I was able to hand off a lot of what I was doing, all this K-Rock stuff, to Megan. And
nobody better. Yeah, nobody better.
And Megan took that book and ran with it.
And invented new stuff along the way. Yeah.
And some more. Basically, the you know, when we looked at show costs, when you got to K-Rock shows, one of the biggest overheads was servicing the photocopier. Yeah, this gal printed books. You know, every stagehand, every union guy had his book.
Killing trees.
You know, this is what you're going to do on this band, and the guy'd have a diagram, and it was
Of course,
it was
he did.
thick. Yeah,
Yeah.
she worked. Yeah, she worked hard on that one.
Yeah.
But that whole K-Rock 90s thing was really good for us. I don't think people realized, you know, that we weren't a bulk vendor. You know, we had limited inventory, sound lights, video. We flew under the radar a lot while the bulk vendors were banging heads. We'd be out there with 2 semis with sound lights, maybe video, and nobody was bidding on it. You know, we were under the radar, and that has been a big factor. Delica Productions is almost 50% corporate special events too, so it's we're sound lights, video, we're concert touring, special events, corporate business meetings. I should say now that in 2000 and I think it was 2009, Jason Alt came on board. Here's a good one for you. Ready? On a road case.
Here's the nitty gritty about
at K-Rock. Okay. Behind the turntable, and Jane's Addiction are on. Yeah, our old band, and the monitor engineer is Jason. Oh, so I know how Perry is. He's not the easiest artist to work.
He's not.
He used to have his own audio effects. His mic could go in there.
Still does.
And by the
Still
time
does.
well, he didn't with Jason.
Oh,
Jason
wow.
slapped his
Nice.
wrist and read the riot act.
Wow.
And I was impressed, and I watched.
I'm
Jason
impressed.
setting up that band and how he had control over everything.
Wow.
And after the set, I walked up to him. I said, "That was pretty good, man." And I said, "Are you available for any work?" And he said, "Well, here's my card." And
Nice.
I thought, you know, independent. He's got his card.
Yeah, as you do.
So.
Good for him. He takes all the hard artists.
Yeah,
He's out there doing David Lee Roth right now, which is hilarious. It's like, dude, why the pain? Why are you taking the pain?
yeah.
Good for him.
And so it wasn't long before I think it was Rob Zombie. I think a White Zombie, then
Right.
and then Rob
Yeah.
Zombie, and we've been doing them for years. And Ted Keedick said he's looking for a monitor guy, and hey, Jason, you know. Jason went to work for a more corporate type company, and when our former partner Steve Gilbard left Delicate, I was looking for a replacement. Talking to Numo, and he says, "Well, what about Jason?" I said, well, "Jason's, you know, working down at Vox Entertainment." He said, "Call him." So I called Jason, and the next day it was a done deal. So
Amazing.
Jason came on, and he's the new blood. And it was a major change in Delicate Productions, because he came in and he recognized that this old democratic social system where everybody, you know, is on the same wage and everybody, and you know, wasn't going to work. He found a hybrid where you kept the family group together. But there were, you know, but you needed goals and you needed demands, and he brought a slightly different culture from, you know, through right for the last 12 years. So hats off to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. I didn't realize it'd been 12 years. I thought it'd been about 4. So that's where that's how my time's going.
Well, that's how your time is. Yeah.
We, you know, he worked very well. He's a great engineer. With David Lee Roth, there were, you know, it's recent ventures. I was a bit of a revolving door front of house engineer, so Jason sort of steps up to fill in.
Yep.
Next thing is he's out there, he's doing production manager, mixing for the house.
I know it. I know
looking for help.
amazing.
And I got to hand it to him. He did it. He when he took over, when he worked for Crooked Vultures, Dave Grohl, and everything was about service. And we out of that we ended up with the Foo Fighters, and you know, it was unbelievable. We're doing RFK Stadium with the Foo Fighters. We will work in the US, Brit Row will work in Europe, and Claire's bought Brit Row, so you know, Claire Global.
Yeah.
You know, so we saw it. We stepped aside. That was the right move there. But Jason's brought on some terrific acts for us, and he's very, very hot with the corporate. We haven't even mentioned Bottle Rock.
Yeah, right.
That's a handful. That's his lot in life. And again,
Northern California Festival. Yeah.
It's a bit like the K-Rock syndrome. You know, you only one bad show with an artist, they don't want to see you again.
Yeah,
I know it.
And then when you've got four stages, and Snoop and Martha Stewart on the 5th stage, the cooking stage. Every one of them important, by the way.
Of course. Yeah.
Look, I've ranted, and I haven't really given you chaps much of a chance to.
No, it's great. You know, we love.
Yeah, this is perfect.
We love hearing these stories and how you got to where
you
you
haven't heard anything.
Well, I know. I believe
the abridged version.
We need 4 hours with you, but
yeah, and I realize that your target here is to try and shall we say introduce or inspire the younger generations coming up more about our business. I know it always comes up. How do they get in the business?
Yep.
I guess then I'd like to just say expand on that a bit. How do they only get in the business? I'd like to know how you chose people like Jason and Megan, how you spotted that great talent to bring it into your company, I guess, and maybe tell them what you saw in them to bring them on.
Yeah. What do you look for?
Yeah. What do you look for? How did you spot them?
They came on board. They'd already, Jason had matured into the business. So he'd built his own studio. He was his own man. He didn't need doors to open for him. He's the one who was immediately opening doors for others. Megan was smart. She learned the basics. Okay, and this is probably something to pay attention to. Go to school, whatever it is. Learn your trade as best you can in a classroom. But if you've got experience where you've actually been a stagehand, or you've got some idea of the punishing hours, what's required from you, that helps a great deal. Don't aspire to be don't go looking for a front of house mix gig. I'll point it out to you.
Yeah,
guys, if you work in the warehouse, right, but you've got your school credits, you're in the warehouse, you're building the systems for the company, you're putting together amp racks, you're doing all of this. At some point, they're going to go, crikey, who are we going to send? What about Joe? You know, and Joe gets to do his first show as 4th man. You know, he's trained, he's done it in the shop. We know his personality, they know his chemistry, he'll get on with everybody. Joe now has those opportunities now to get to know the system. All these guys, tell me, there's very few engineers out there who weren't system engineers. Kenny with the Killers, Kenny Kaiser, he was a system engineer. He put up the system, he tuned the system, tweaked the system, he did everything but push faders. He took over, awesome. And that's just the same as so many. Do you know, I just a name flash. Tony Blanc was from MEH Tasco. You know,
That's right. Yeah.
I thought you might bring skin into this.
And
Tony
skin.
slept black boxes. You know, so don't be in a rush because you've got the academic credit. Get your foot in the door and then apply that knowledge. And if you're a good guy, you'll go the distance. If you and words of wisdom. If you're working AV for an AV company and you're married and you think you're going to enjoy life on the road, then you might as well give up your marriage. If you're on the road and your relationship develops, then you've got a good chance of it lasting. But don't aspire to go on the road when you've got commitments at home, because it's just near impossible. And
that's good advice. Good advice.
It's low percentage for sure.
Yeah,
It's low percentage. Yeah.
So it's,
I want to get into just a little bit right here at the end. You know, guys, we're going to go to a question and answer period. We're going to, of course, ask another, 30 minutes of smoother, some more questions. But kind of at the end here, I want to talk about your whole story that you've just told us for an hour is all about relationships and about how you were connected to so-and-so. So you got a call from somebody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you put yourself in that place? How did you come to a place where, because a lot of this isn't chance, right? It's not chance.
Most important thing here, all right, is there has to be a mutual respect out there. Audio guys have to work with lighting guys. You have to work together. You've got to, every show's layered. Cable management. How many tours, start off and it's just a big fight because the PA can't because the lighting cables.
I spent my life looking at a truss at 15 feet off the ground.
The riggers are all moving. That you got to talk to people up front. You got to be on the same page with the layered structure. You got to respect what other people are doing. Because we're a sound and lighting shop, we know if we're doing the same projects, it's dead easy. But and always, we pull the guys into the tech room, a big table layout, and we go over the drawings. And these meetings for corporate shows can be very demanding. You've got to have everybody involved. Get the LD out here. I don't care. We've got one shot at this. Get to know all the players. And respect what they're looking to do. That's really important with relationships.
That's within the show. I want to know a little bit about when you were building your business. You came across, you were a monitor engineer for all these bands. Yeah. Then you went, hey, you know what? This gear is available. Why don't we just turn this into a business? And then you started getting calls all the time from various managers and et cetera. Right. How did that all happen?
Well, you have to understand. Hey, first I started off, I finished Supertramp tour. I was smoother. I got that from Kiss tour. I started making calls and nobody would take my call because I'd say it's Chris SMYTH on the phone. I called back again. So I tell him it's smoother. I said, why didn't you tell me?
Same thing happened to me. Yeah, totally.
My wife Beverly said, "Look, your nickname's Smoother. When I met you, she was the bookkeeper with Supertramp. Just stick with it." And I did. So after a rough start, but the examples were working with Barry Marshall. Okay. Now you know why Pab works for McCartney, by the way.
Yes. That's great.
Barry Marshall connection, Spice connection to the bands down under. Those I'm working with Michael Oberg with the Killers. He's the production manager. Michael worked with Spy in 1972 with an Aussie band called the Skyhooks. So it's a network, but it's only as good as your last show. It's the old pals won't do you any good if you're
blowing it. Yeah. if you're blown.
And again, like Tater knows this. He does the K-Rock show. The mandate for that show for us, one of the prime mandates, is that he comes in, mixes monitors, and leaves with his job. And
that's an important feature.
We need you guys. You got to come back to us. You got to have the reputation. We work in a big corporate event. It's an arena show, and the client reaches out to the band and they say, "Who are you working with?" And they say, "Delicate Productions." They say, "Oh, that's cool," because I said, we produced. That's very important, and that's been part of our the future development. I know that when we were talking offline here before this interview,
not recorded, by the way.
What's that?
Not recorded, by the way.
Yeah, not recorded.
Not recorded.
Never did like him.
No, but there, what we spoke about was that feeling that Tater and I and hundreds of other engineers had coming to those K-Rock things, in that we know everything's handled. Delicate's there, Megan's there, Jason's there.
Yeah, there's
literally towards the end of that for me was literally like calling him up and saying, "Is everything good?" And having Megan say, "Yeah, everything's good." And that was our conversation. That was it. Like,
and not only on the K-Rock shows. I mean, with Linkin Park all those years, we did so many specialties. Think about that LA Conservatory one.
Oh, yeah.
All those Transformers ones, the
Anytime
small K. Anytime in LA, and Linkin Park was doing those really unique corporate. I guess they're corporate, right? Yeah. One-off type events.
Yeah.
With delicate handling it, just with precision. It was just, nobody likes to do those events, especially when you're out on the road and then you got one of those thrown in. And Delicate always made it a pleasure for us. There was no thinking about it for us coming.
And let's make it clear, it's not even necessarily about the gear, or actually was not about the gear. It's about that we knew that the people that you provided were going to be excellent.
Yes.
And so
I's dotted, T's crossed. Yes.
Yeah. And so from your perspective, with just a little bit of time that we have left right now, can you tell us, like, how did that happen? Like, how do you go into training? Do you talk to all your employees about how does it trickle down, right? People, like, how did that happen?
A lot of our show people are you guys. We're fortunate that we're in Los Angeles and in Orange County, LA County, etc. There's a whole plethora of talented engineers who are between projects, and so those relationships develop where they can come into the shop, prep systems, and do the various one-offs. We're not large enough to have a full full staff of audio engineers waiting when you say, "Oh, this one's a Digico. We need somebody proficient with this, or this one's a corporate." We can pull from that pool of expertise. And that's and again, those relationships make for a two-way street. You're working with us when it's your opportunity is yours. You may say, "Hey, let's go to Delicate for that." We're very fortunate to have such a huge talent pool out there of independent engineers.
And let's just make this clear too. LA is not a benefit when it comes to guest lists. So we want to make that totally 100% clear. But I want to go on to say, how did you get the nickname Smoother? You kind of passed over it on a Kiss thing.
I'd hoped you wouldn't ask. Okay. on Kiss, I guess the band bus was following stuck in traffic behind a semi, and it was Van Lines, and it was SMYTH Van Lines was the logo, and underneath it said the Smoother Mover. And so the guys started, he's the Smoother Mover. So I was the Smoother Mover for a year and a half, and then that got abbreviated to Smoother. and on from, on the crews that I work with, I work with a lot of the same people. So the nickname just followed me from project to project. You say that, Margaret Thatcher, and I was introduced to Margaret Thatcher at a business meeting. She said, "Smoother, that's a rather strange name."
That's great. Oh man, I love it.
I grew up in Lincolnshire, where she's from. That broke the ice with her. And again, I guess you touched on it, like when INXS were looking to pick their vendor for their 2006 tour, I think it was, with a replacement for Michael Hutchence. The quotes went on the desk, and Paul Spriggs said, "Oh, we got this quote from Smoother." And Tim Farris, the guitarist, says, "Smoother, we know Smoother." Now, if my name was Rick,
totally.
I'm not sure that we would be doing those INXS dates.
Yeah.
I've often said that to people. I had the same problem where, people knew me as Ken and Pooch, and they couldn't make the connection. They were the same person, and so I was actually losing gigs because I didn't accept my nickname. So
you got to accept it. Just got to go with it.
And when you're going to do some corporate project, and they say, "We'll bring in Pooch," and they go, "Yeah, hello."
I know. Well,
sorry, it's the Ken.
What are you going to do? Man. Well, hey, listen, we're out of time for this, and we told you it would fly by, but thank you so much. We're going to go to the Q&A, guys. We're going to ask him some more questions, and tune into that for in the next couple of days.
I want to go into a little bit about manufacturer and vendor loyalty too. We've kind of gone over employee loyalty. I'd like to go over vendor and manufacturer loyalty. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But listen, Smoother, thank you so much. We were so unbelievably grateful that you could, spend some time with us, and thank you.
Yeah, and let's make it clear. Thank you for you guys who have taken the time to do this during this downtime. Hats off to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope that the Ken and Kevin show grows to great success.
And also, I guess let's give ourselves a plug. Let's give ourselves a plug. Megan was on like episode 4. If somebody wants to go back and watch that, she was on.
Go back to Wrong End of the Snake there, the YouTube channel, and go check out her episode was amazing as well. So go check that out. So thank you, Smoother, and we're looking forward to the Q&A part of this. Hey guys, next week on Wrong End of the Snake is Frank Scrambles is going to be here. Wow. Frank has been doing gigs before he had a driver's license. After many years of traveling around the Northeast in vans, he's decided to go first to the New England Technical Institute, where he studied electronics, and then Full Sail for the recording arts. After realizing that he didn't like the studio, he was hired by Shoko, where he embarked on a long and sordid front of house live sound career, which included artists such as Godsmack, Rob Zombie, Alice in Chains, Dixie Chicks, and the Goo Goo Dolls. He now mixes Luke Bryan. He's gone to country. And has become one of the most respected audio system design engineers at Claire Global. So we're very, very excited to have Frank next week. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. We've had over 10,000 hours of watch time to our channel, and we're grateful that you have helped us to reach this milestone. Thank you. Subscribe and smash like on all our videos. Thanks for tuning in. And here is our new outro from Pete.
This concludes another fantastic episode of The Wrong End of the Snake, starring Ken Pooch Van Druten and Kevin Tater McCarthy. Don't forget to follow and like us at all your favorite social media outlets at Wrong End of the Snake. If you're looking for past episodes, head on over to the YouTube channel, where we're going right now for the Q&A with today's guest. All your past episodes are there posted for your enjoyment at your convenience. But if you'd like to interact and badger the guest and the host in future live episodes, please sign up for the Zoom webcast. You won't regret it. Thank you for tuning in to the wrong end of the snake.
Gorgeous.
Appreciate that.